Hi, I'm Peter Jones, Chartered Surveyor, author and property investor, and in this short series of videos we're looking at the principal property investing strategies that we can use. And next on my list is rent to rent. What is rent to rent? Well, very simply put, it's subletting. But for some people, subletting might sort of throw up images of illegal activity, and we'll think about that. I don't mean anything illegal or anything dodgy. It is literally, though, just subletting. So a typical stereotypical example of rent to rent could be that you find a tired landlord, somebody who's perhaps been in the property game for a long time. They're fed up of managing their properties, and you can negotiate with them a long-term tenancy, and quid pro quo, the upside and downside, the trade-off for a long-term tenancy is that you may be able to agree a lower rent than market rent, and then you can rent the property out on a short-term basis at market rent and pocket the difference. But it doesn't have to be, for example, HMOs. I know a lot of people are renting properties and converting them into HMOs. It doesn't have to be a HMO. When this all started back in the day, I remember that a lot of people were doing rent to rent, and they were doing single let units, but they were just able to negotiate from the property owner a low enough rent to be able to make it work if they then let it out as a single let to somebody on a short-term tenancy. Some of the things that you need to think about with this are whether it's acceptable under the terms of the mortgage. Sometimes people assume that subletting is illegal because there's been a lot of chat in the press about subletting. Firstly, if it's a council property and people taking on a council tenancy and then subletting, yeah, that's a no-no. But also subletting may be against the terms of a buy-to-let mortgage, for example. So if you were going to rent a property off another landlord, you need to make sure that you're not making them go in violation of their mortgage. By the way, can these things be solved with a phone call to the lender? Well, quite often yes, but they might just want to change the terms of the mortgage. The other thing you need to think about, of course, is to make sure that it doesn't invalidate anybody's insurance. But if that's all okay, then subletting is or rent to rent is a very simple strategy which many people can use. One of the main benefit of rent to rent is that you can start with very little capital. You don't actually have to buy a property, you just go and rent a property and then you rent it out again. The bigger disadvantage, of course, with rent to rent is that you don't own the property, which means that you don't, if there's any capital growth, benefit from the capital growth over the years. But if you're stuck for cash and you want to get started in property and you want to start building some income, and if you perhaps have the potential to save that income to put down as deposits on a investment portfolio in the future, then rent to rent could be a way to do that. And one last thought on that, if you're going to do rent to rent, one thing which I'd always suggest is that you think about seeing if you can negotiate an option deal to run alongside that. You may recall that in an earlier video we talked about the crazy stuff, things like options, instalment contracts, delayed completions. That would work really well with a rent to rent, because you could say to whoever you're renting the property off something like, I want to rent the property off you at X pounds per month for the next 5 years, but by the way, if it works out, is it okay if I buy the property off you in 5 years' time, and can we agree the price that I'd pay you now? Basically agreeing an option. So I'd always be asking that if I was doing a rent to rent. So a few ideas on that, hope you find that helpful. Until next time, here's to successful property investing.
Yeah.